Blue Hood. Long ago, there was a holy monk named Zen Master Kaian, who was revered for his Buddhist virtues. From a young age, he had understood the essence of Zen Buddhism, and had dedicated himself to a life of pilgrimage across various countries. One year, after completing the summer retreat at Ryataiji Temple in Minyo Province, he decided to stay in the U region during the autumn and set out toward the eastern lands. As he continued his journey, he eventually entered the country of Shinmotsuke. When he arrived in a village called Tomita in this region, night had fallen, so he stood before a large and seemingly affluent house, requesting a place to stay for the night. Just then, men returning from the field saw the monk standing in the gathering dusk and seemed quite frightened, shouting loudly, "The mountain demon has come! Everyone, come out!" Hearing this commotion, those inside the house suddenly began to panic, with women and children crying out and scrambling to hide in the shadows or corners. A man, presumably the head of the household, ran out holding a pointed carrying pole. When he peered into the dimness outside, he saw an elderly monk, nearly 50 years old, wearing a dark blue hood and tattered black robes, standing with a bundle on his back. Upon seeing the host, the monk raised his staff and beckoned, saying, "Master, why are you being so cautious? I am a traveling monk who only seeks to borrow a place to stay for one night. I was waiting for someone to come out, but I never expected to be treated with such suspicion. There's no way such a skinny monk would be a thief, so please do not suspect me." Hearing this, the host threw down his carrying pole, clapped his hands in laughter, and said, "I apologize for alarming you due to their misunderstanding. I would like to atone for this offense by offering you hospitality for the night." He then bowed respectfully, guided the monk inside, and warmly presented him with a meal. After the meal, the host spoke as follows: "The reason why the tenants were so frightened upon seeing you, monk, claiming that a demon had come, is indeed due to some considerable circumstances. Allow me to explain. There is something quite rare happening here. It is truly a mysterious tale, but please share it with others as well. There is a temple on the mountain above this village, which was originally the place of worship for the Oyama clan. Generations of virtuous monks have served as its priests. The current abbot is the nephew of the appropriate lineage, well regarded for his deep learning and rigorous practice, and the people of this land have shown their faith by offering incense and candles. He often visited my home, and we enjoyed a warm friendship. However, it was last spring when he was invited to the province of Koshin as a teacher for the transmission of teachings and stayed there for over 100 days. He returned with a boy of around 12 or 13 years old, whom he had brought to assist him. This boy was exceptionally refined and beautiful, and the abbot grew very fond of him, seemingly neglecting his long years of dedicated Buddhist practice. Then, around April of this year, the boy fell ill with a slight ailment, but as days passed, his condition worsened. The abbot was greatly distressed and even called in the most distinguished physician from the provincial office, but despite their efforts, the boy ultimately passed away. It was as if he had lost a precious gem from his pocket, or as if a flower adorning his hair had been scattered by a storm. He mourned the loss of the beloved child, sinking into a depth of sorrow where tears would not flow, and even his cries were silenced. So deep was his grief that he did not perform the funeral rites, leaving the body unburied. Instead, he pressed his face against the deceased's and clasped the boy's hands with his own, spending several days like this. Eventually, he lost his sanity, engaging in the same playful manner he had when the boy was alive, lamenting the decay of the body and eventually consuming it completely, gnawing on the flesh and sucking the bones dry. Those who remained in the temple were horrified and fled, saying, "The abbot has truly become a demon." Afterward, he descended nightly to the village, frightening the villagers, and at times even digging up graves to consume the corpses, which he would devour in a grotesque manner. While I had heard of demons and old tales, I witnessed with my own eyes how the abbot had truly become one. However, there was nothing we could do to restrain or stop him. All we could do was close our doors tightly at dusk. This situation has become widely known throughout the land, leading to a complete cessation of travel. Indeed, this is why the tenants mistook you for a demon as well." Upon hearing this story, Kan said, "Indeed, there are mysterious things in this world. Throughout human existence, many people live their lives ignorant of the vast teachings of the Buddha and Bodhisattvas, ending their days in foolishness and twisted hearts. Such individuals, dragged down by their desires and evil thoughts, may sometimes be reborn as beasts in their past lives, seeking revenge, or at other times, become demons or monstrous creatures that bring curses upon others. Countless examples of this have been seen from ancient times to the present. Conversely, there are also those who become demons while still alive. The court lady who served King So became a serpent, while the mother of King Gon transformed into a yaksha, and the wife of Gosei turned into a moth. Long ago, a certain monk sought refuge for a night at the house of a lowly person. That night, there was a fierce storm, and with no light, he felt anxious and lonely, unable to sleep. Late into the night, he heard the bleating of sheep, and shortly after, he sensed something sniffing around his body as if it were checking on him. Thinking it was something suspicious, he took his Zen staff, which he had placed by his pillow, and struck the creature with all his strength, causing it to fall to the ground with a loud cry. Hearing this noise, the elderly woman who was the owner of the house came in with a light, and upon shining it, they found a young woman lying there. Seeing this, the old woman pleaded with the monk through tears, begging him to spare the girl's life. There was nothing he could do, he could not kill her, so he left it as it was and departed the house. Later, he happened to pass through that village again and saw a large gathering of people in a rice field, curious about what was happening. When he approached and asked, "What is going on?" the villagers replied, "We have captured a woman who has become a demon, and we are now burying her." However, all these cases involved women, and I have never heard of a man transforming into such a thing. It seems that due to the twisted nature of a woman's troubled mind, they are capable of becoming such disgraceful demons. That said, there was a man during the Sui dynasty named Mashubu, who preferred the flesh of children and secretly abducted them from the villages, steaming their flesh to eat. But this act stemmed from a base and savage heart, quite different from what you have just described. Even so, it can be said that the monk becoming a demon while alive is indeed a manifestation of past karmic retribution. After all, the reason why he excelled in his training and accumulated virtue was that he devoted himself wholeheartedly to serving the Buddha. If he had not kept the boy close by to care for him, he would surely have become an admirable monk. It is truly a pity. Once he strayed into the maze of desires, consumed by the flames of insatiable desires, he transformed into a demon. This transformation was solely due to his stubborn and unwavering nature, which, once determined, he pursued relentlessly. The saying, "If one relaxes their heart, they become a demon, if one tightens their heart and serves the Buddha, they can become a Buddha," is exemplified by this monk. If I could guide this demon back to its original good nature, it would also be a way to repay the kindness shown to me tonight. Thus, Kan resolved to put himself at risk to teach the demon and alleviate the suffering of the people. The host, pressing his forehead against the tatami, said, "If the monk could do that, the people of this region would feel as though they had been reborn in paradise, overwhelmed with joy and tears." Since they were staying in the mountains, there was no significant temple nearby, and the sounds of shells or bells were not heard on that quiet night. The late moon, more than 20 days old, rose, casting moonlight through the cracks of the old door. As the night deepened, the host said, "Well then, please rest," and he himself withdrew to his bedroom. It seemed that no one resided in the mountain temple. Brambles had overgrown the gate, and the sutra hall lay abandoned, covered in moss. The main hall was filled with spider webs, draping between the Buddha statues, while swallows' droppings buried the fire altar, leaving the main hall and corridor in a state of terrible disarray. As the sun tilted to the west, Zen Master Kain stepped into the temple, tapping his staff and calling out for guidance, saying, "I am a traveling monk from distant lands, please lend me shelter for the night." He called out several times, but there was no response. Finally, a frail monk emerged from the sleeping quarters, his steps weak and unsteady. Upon seeing the Zen master, he spoke in a dry, cracked voice, "Where do you intend to go, coming here? This temple has fallen into such disrepair for reasons unknown, and it has become like an abandoned field. We have not even a grain of food and cannot offer a place to stay. You should hurry and descend to the village." In response, the Zen master said, "I am on my way to Ashu after leaving Minyo, but as I passed through this village at the foot of the mountain, I was captivated by the beautiful shape of the mountains and the flow of the water, and I couldn't help but come here. The sun has already begun to set, and descending to the village now would be quite a distance. I implore you to lend me shelter for just one night." The monk replied, "Such a desolate place may have its own troubles. Therefore, I cannot insist on keeping you here. However, I cannot simply ask you to leave. You may do as your heart desires." After saying this, he fell silent and did not speak again. The Zen master, having nothing more to say, ascended to the hall and sat beside the monk. The autumn sun set quickly, and before long, darkness enveloped the night, becoming nearly pitch black without even a lamplit, making it difficult to see just ahead. Only the sound of the valley stream was audible nearby. The monk remained in his room, making not a sound thereafter. As the night deepened, it became a moonlit night. The moonlight was clear and bright, illuminating everything. Just around what seemed to be midnight, the host monk emerged from his sleeping quarters and began to search for something in a fluster. However, unable to find it, he shouted, "Damn that monk, where has he hidden? He was definitely here." While running past the Zen master several times, he did not seem to notice him at all. He dashed towards the main hall, then went down to the garden, spinning around in a frenzy, and ultimately collapsed, exhausted, unable to rise again. As dawn broke and the morning sun rose, he appeared as if he had just awoken from a drunken stupor. He looked around, and upon seeing the Zen master sitting in the same spot, he stood there dazed, speechless, leaning against a pillar and exhaling deeply in silence. The Zen master approached him and said, "Innkeeper, what troubles you? If you are hungry, you may eat my flesh to fill your belly." The host monk replied, "Were you there all night, master?" The Zen master answered, "I have not slept a wink here." The host monk continued, "How shameful it is, but I have come to relish human flesh, yet I have never tasted the flesh of a living Buddha like you. You are truly a Buddha. Even though I try to see the living Buddha before me with my beastly eyes, it is only natural that I cannot. Oh, how unfortunate." With that, he lowered his head and fell silent. The Zen master continued, "From what I hear from the villagers, it seems you have fallen into the turmoil of desire and have quickly degenerated into a monstrous being. This is an unspeakably rare and unfortunate consequence of your actions, both pitiable and despicable. Because you venture out at night and harm the villagers, those nearby are in a constant state of anxiety. Upon hearing this, I could not abandon you, and I have come all this way to guide you back to your original, good nature. I must ask if you are willing to listen to my teachings." The resident monk replied, "You are truly a living Buddha. Please teach me the way to immediately forget such despicable evil deeds I have committed." The Zen master responded, "If you are willing to listen to my teachings, then come here." He had the monk sit on the flat stone in front of the veranda and, removing the indigo-dyed hood he wore, placed it on the monk's head. He then instructed him to recite the 2 verses of the Shadoka, Song of Enlightenment. "The moon illuminates the cove, and the wind blowing through the pines brings forth the sound of the pine trees. On this long autumn night, what is the purpose of this clear evening scene? It is simply the appearance of nature as it is. However, the form of nature, in its essence, purifies both self and others in its results. This is the principle of nature. If one understands this true intent, one will naturally attain the truth. This is Zen meditation. You should not leave this place, but rather delve deeply into the true meaning of these 2 lines. When you understand their essence, you will naturally encounter the Buddha nature that you originally possessed," he earnestly advised before descending the mountain. After this, the villagers were able to escape the terrible calamity caused by the demon, yet they still did not clearly know the fate of the monk from the mountain temple. Out of doubt and fear, they firmly warned each other against going up the mountain. A year had passed quickly, and in early October of the following winter, Zen Master Kyan was returning from the Ashu region and passed through the village of Tomita once again. He stopped by the home of the host who had provided him with lodging the previous year and inquired about the subsequent condition of the monk from the mountain temple. The host welcomed Kyan with joy and said, "Thanks to your immense virtue, the demon has not descended from the mountain again, and the villagers all feel as if they have been reborn in paradise. However, they are still afraid to go to the mountain, and not a single person dares to ascend. Therefore, I do not know what has become of the demon, but I find it hard to believe he is still alive. Would you please pray tonight for the enlightenment and peaceful repose of that monk? Let us all make merits together." The Zen master replied, "If that man achieved rebirth as a reward for his good deeds, then in the way of Buddhist enlightenment, he is indeed like my senior teacher. If he is still alive, then he is one of my disciples. In any case, I must check on his situation." With that, he ascended the mountain once more. Indeed, as the host had said, it seemed that all human traffic had completely ceased. The path he had once trodden the previous year was unrecognizable. Upon entering the temple, he found that the reeds and miscanthus had grown higher than a person's height, and the dew dripping from the plants was falling like a drizzle. The overgrown grass made it impossible to determine the paths within the temple grounds. The doors of the main hall and the sutra hall were rotting and had fallen apart, while the corridors connecting the main hall and the kitchen had decayed wood, soaking up moisture, and were covered in moss. When he searched the area where he had seated the monk, he found a person who was emaciated and almost indistinguishable from a monk or a layperson, with hair and beard unkempt. Amidst the tangled weeds and the miscanthus swaying, the figure was muttering in a voice so thin it was barely audible, as if a mosquito were buzzing. Listening closely, the fragmented words being chanted were, "The moon illuminates the cove, and the wind blowing through the pines brings forth the sound of the pine trees. On this long autumn night, what is the purpose of this clear evening scene? It is simply the appearance of nature as it is. However, the form of nature, in its essence, purifies both self and others in its results. This is the principle of nature. If one understands this true intent, one will naturally attain the truth. This is Zen meditation." This was the famous hymn of enlightenment. The Zen master had been closely watching the man, and after a while, he picked up his Zen staff and shouted, "What are you doing here?" striking the man's head. In that instant, the man's form vanished as if ice were melting in the morning sun, leaving behind only the blue hood and bones on the grass. Truly, the long-standing attachment had completely dissipated at that moment. There lies the profound principles and teachings of Buddhism. For this reason, the Zen master's vast virtue became widely known even in distant foreign lands, and people praised him, saying, "It seems that the founder Bodhidharma is still alive." Subsequently, the people of the village gathered to purify the temple, make repairs, and invited the Zen master to reside as the head priest. They converted from Shingon Buddhism to establish a precious Soto Zen temple. This temple is known as Daishuji at Daiheizan, and it continues to thrive with reverence even today.